What was the exact moment she slipped away from you? The moment you felt her energy change even before her words did. Maybe it was that night she replied late, or when her voice sounded distant, or when she said, "You deserve someone better," and your chest sank because you knew that sentence was a lie wrapped in an exit plan. You keep replaying it, don't you? Wondering how a woman who once leaned into your presence now leans away like you never existed. Here's the part that will hurt, but it's the part you need. She didn't leave because another man was better. She left because your words stopped living in her mind. She forgot your voice when the lights went out. She stopped fantasizing. And when a woman stops imagining you, she replaces you. Every man watching this has felt it. The quiet betrayal, the slow emotional withdrawal, the way she smiled at her phone while you sat right there, and you told yourself, if I just say the right thing, if I compliment her more, if I try harder, that's where you lost. Because most compliments don't spark desire. They kill it. They make you safe, predictable, forgettable. And women don't fantasize about men they can predict. But there are 3 compliments, dangerous ones, that don't boost her ego. They invade her subconscious. They follow her into silence, into her bed, into the moments she's alone and pretending she's over you. If you've ever been replaced, ghosted, or slowly faded out, this video isn't entertainment, it's a correction. Before you hear the first one, subscribe now, not later, because once you understand this, you can't unlearn it, and most men will never catch up to you. Then comment the last thing your ex said before she walked away. Write it exactly as she said it, because by the end of this video, you'll realize why those words sealed your fate and how to make sure no woman ever forgets you again. Compliment 1. You have a calm confidence about you, it's rare. Picture a quiet bar in London, the kind where the music sits in the background and conversations breathe. James isn't trying to impress anyone. He's leaning back, relaxed, watching the room instead of hunting for attention. Across from him is Emily. She's attractive. Yes, but that's not what stands out. What stands out is how unbothered she is. She listens more than she speaks. She doesn't rush to fill silence. She isn't performing. Most men miss this. They rush, they talk. They compliment the obvious. Emily has heard it all before. Nice smile, great eyes, beautiful dress. Those words slide off her because they don't touch anything real. They don't see her. They only see what everyone else sees. James waits. The conversation drifts from travel to work to nothing in particular. Then, without changing his tone, without leaning in or lowering his voice, he says it. You have a calm confidence about you. It's rare. He doesn't smile for approval. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't stack another compliment on top. He simply lets the sentence exist, then takes a sip of his drink. That moment lands harder than any dramatic line ever could, because calm confidence is not something Emily hears often. People either call her intimidating or quiet or mysterious, but calm confidence reframes her entire identity. It tells her something deeper, that her emotional control is visible, that her presence is felt, that she doesn't need to try. Here's what happens inside her mind. She doesn't think he likes me. She thinks, is that really how I come across? That question is everything. Women are constantly evaluating themselves through reflection, how they're perceived, how they affect others, how they move through the world. When you name a quality she didn't consciously label herself, you introduce a new self-image, and the female mind doesn't discard that easily. It explores it. It tests it. It revisits it. Later that night, when Emily is home alone, brushing her teeth, replaying the evening, that sentence resurfaces. Not his face, not his clothes. The sentence, calm confidence. She remembers how he said it, casually, like an observation, not a compliment. That's what gives it weight. It wasn't an attempt to win her. It was a recognition, and recognition feels earned. Most men don't understand this. Attraction deepens when a woman feels understood without being dissected. James didn't analyze her. He didn't flatter her. He simply noticed something true and spoke it aloud. That's why this compliment lingers. In New York, in Manchester, in Toronto, women move through noisy environments full of men trying to be seen. The man who slows the pace immediately stands out. When you name calm confidence, you align yourself with that same emotional rhythm. You're telling her without saying it directly that you operate on her level. And there's another layer here that most men miss. Calm confidence is associated with emotional safety. A man who notices it and values it Signals that he isn't chaotic, reactive, or desperate. He isn't trying to extract validation. He's grounded. That contrast creates polarity. Emily doesn't feel chased. She feels chosen. That difference is subtle, but it changes everything. She starts to wonder what else he sees. She starts to replay the conversation, searching for clues, reevaluating moments she didn't think mattered. Her imagination fills in the gaps because he didn't. That's the mistake most men make. They overfill space. They explain too much. They talk themselves out of mystery. James lets silence carry the weight. This compliment works because it doesn't demand a response. It doesn't corner her into saying thank you. It simply places an idea in her mind and walks away. And ideas are far more powerful than compliments. When a woman starts seeing herself differently because of something you said, you've already won. Not because you impressed her, but because you shifted her self-perception. That's why this single sentence can stay with her all night. Not as desire, but as reflection. Not as fantasy, but as curiosity. And curiosity is where everything begins. Say it once. Say it only when it's true. And say it like you don't need it to work. Because the moment you don't need it, that's when it does. Compliment 2. You're different when you're passionate about something.
Picture a late evening cafe in New York.
The kind with dim lights and half empty. Tables where conversations feel more honest because no one is trying to impress the room. Daniel sits across from Sarah. Up to this point, the interaction has been smooth but ordinary. She's engaged, polite, measured. This is where most men either force chemistry or retreat into safe talk. Daniel does neither. The conversation drifts, work, travel, small opinions. Then Sarah mentions something she almost apologizes for. Photography. Not Instagram shots. Real photography. Long walks. Waiting for light. Getting lost in the city with a camera. Something changes. Her posture shifts. Her hands move more. Her voice sharpens then softens. She's no longer managing the conversation. She's inside it. Daniel notices. And that's the key word, notices. When she finishes, there's a pause. No rush. No joke to break the moment. Then he says it calmly, like he's stating a fact to himself as much as to her. You're different when you're passionate about something. He doesn't say it like praise. He doesn't add, I like that, or it's attractive. He lets the sentence stand alone. Sarah freezes for half a second, because that sentence isn't about her hobby. It's about her state. It tells her he saw the shift, that he was paying attention not just to her words, but to her energy. Women are extremely sensitive to whether a man is tracking surface information or emotional changes. Most men fail this test without knowing it. Here's what happens in her mind. She doesn't think about the compliment. She thinks about the moment he noticed. The exact second she stopped filtering herself and he caught it. That's dangerous territory in the best way. Women are rarely seen at that level. Men either sexualize their passion or dismiss it. Daniel does neither. He doesn't say it's cute. He doesn't say it's impressive. He simply mirrors it back to her. Different. That word matters. Because it implies depth. It suggests layers. It tells her she isn't one fixed version. And women are deeply drawn to men who recognize their internal complexity without trying to control it. Later that night, when Sarah is lying in bed, phone face down, that sentence comes back. Not as a memory of Daniel, but as a question about herself. Am I different when I'm passionate? She replays how she felt talking about photography, how alive she was, how rare it felt to be witnessed without interruption, without being redirected, without being evaluated. And here's the part most men never understand. When you associate yourself with a woman's most alive version of herself, you become emotionally anchored to that state. She doesn't just remember you. She remembers how she felt being herself around you. That's what fuels fantasy. Not looks, not confidence, emotional permission. In London, in Toronto, in Los Angeles, women move through environments where they're constantly managing impressions. When a man points out a moment where that mask slipped and she became more her, it creates intimacy without touch. This compliment works because it doesn't chase validation. It doesn't say, I like you when. It says, I see what happens when you care. Subtle difference, massive impact. And notice what Daniel didn't do. He didn't ask follow-up questions immediately. He didn't dig. He didn't turn her passion into content for himself. He let the moment breathe. That restraint signals emotional maturity. It tells her he's not extracting value. He's observing reality. That's rare. Women are wired to test emotional safety unconsciously. A man who can witness intensity without trying to own it passes that test. He's not threatened by depth. He's not overwhelmed by emotion. He doesn't need to steer the conversation back to himself. That's why this line stays with her, because it's not about being liked, it's about being seen. If you say this compliment too early, it fails. If you say it with hunger, it fails. If you say it hoping for a reaction, it fails. It only works when it's true and when you're willing to say it without needing anything in return. That's the discipline most men lack, and women feel that difference instantly. Sarah doesn't message Daniel that night. She doesn't need to. The work is already happening. Her mind is replaying the evening, connecting dots, wondering what he noticed that she didn't say out loud. The curiosity grows quietly, because when a man reflects a woman's inner shift back to her, he doesn't just compliment her. He enters her internal world. And once you're there, you don't need to chase anything. Compliment 3. You make people feel comfortable being themselves around you. Imagine a quiet rooftop in Los Angeles. Late evening, city lights humming in the background like distant thoughts you can't quite silence. Michael is there with Emily and a small group of friends. Nothing dramatic. No flirting games. Just conversation drifting between jokes, stories, and half-finished sentences. Emily isn't the loudest person there. She's not trying to dominate the space, yet somehow people keep turning toward her. When someone speaks, she listens fully. When someone hesitates, she waits instead of filling the silence. The group relaxes without realizing why. Michael notices something most men overlook. Later, when the group thins out and they're standing near the edge of the rooftop, he doesn't compliment her looks. He doesn't mention her smile. He doesn't tell her she's interesting. He says it calmly, almost thoughtfully. You make people feel comfortable being themselves around you. Emily doesn't laugh. She doesn't deflect. She looks at him like he just said something private out loud, because that sentence doesn't praise her appearance. It names her effect. Women are hyper-aware of how they affect the emotional temperature of a room, even if they don't consciously articulate it. When a man identifies that impact without exaggeration, it lands deep. Here's why this works. Most compliments are transactional. They ask for a response. This one doesn't. It doesn't say, I like you. It says, I see what happens when you're present. That distinction matters more than men realize. In Emily's mind, the compliment doesn't attach to Michael immediately. It attaches inward. She replays moments from her life, friends opening up to her, strangers oversharing, people lingering longer than planned, things she felt but never named. When a man names something a woman is rather than something she does, it creates identity-level attraction. And identity is where fantasy lives. Later that night, when Emily is alone in her apartment, the city quiet for once, that sentence returns uninvited. Not his voice, the idea. People feel safe around me. That realization carries weight. It reframes her self-image. And because Michael was the one who articulated it, his presence becomes associated with that clarity. This is the part most men miss. Women don't fantasize about men who chase them. They fantasize about men who reveal something true about them, something they didn't consciously own yet. In Manchester, in Sydney, in Chicago, the pattern is the same. When a woman feels understood at a foundational level, her mind opens doors her body hasn't yet. Michael doesn't push the moment. He doesn't add, that's rare or that's attractive. He lets silence do the work. Silence after a deep truth feels intimate, because it gives the truth space to settle. Emily fills that silence internally. She wonders how he saw that, how long he's been observing, what else he might notice if she stayed a little longer. That curiosity is electric. This compliment works because it signals emotional intelligence without advertising it. Michael isn't saying, I'm deep. He's demonstrating depth by perceiving it. Women are constantly filtering men based on emotional safety. A man who recognizes emotional impact without exploiting it feels grounded, controlled, secure. That security is seductive. And notice something important. This compliment doesn't create pressure. It doesn't ask her to perform. It doesn't put her on a pedestal. It simply reflects reality. Reflection builds trust faster than praise. Emily doesn't text Michael the next morning. She doesn't need to. He's already present in her thoughts, associated with a feeling she values deeply, ease. When a woman associates a man with emotional ease, her guard lowers without conscious effort. Her imagination fills the gaps. She wonders what it would feel like to be alone, with someone who sees her this clearly. That's where nighttime thoughts begin. Not because he tried to trigger desire, but because he created safety. And here's the hard truth most men won't accept. You cannot fake this compliment. If you don't genuinely observe how a woman affects others, it will sound hollow. Women detect emotional dishonesty instantly. This only works when it's grounded in real perception and delivered without hunger. That restraint is what separates manipulation from mastery. Michael doesn't linger. He doesn't follow up with messages trying to keep momentum alive. He trusts the moment to do its job. And it does. Because when a woman realizes she feels most like herself around you, her mind keeps returning to that space, long after the conversation ends. That's not attraction built on words. That's attraction built on how you made her feel inside her own skin. Conclusion. Now let's be clear about something. If you deliver these compliments from a place of need, they fail. If you stack them, they lose power. If you chase a reaction, you kill the effect. These compliments work only when they're grounded in emotional self-control. When you're not seeking approval, when you're simply stating an observation and moving on, that's what makes them echo. Most men talk too much. They explain too much. They give too much. And in doing so, they drain their words of weight. You won't. You'll speak less, but every word will land. And here's the deeper truth most men never understand. Women don't fantasize about men who try to impress them. They fantasize about men who understand them and don't need anything in return. When you master that balance, attraction stops being something you chase. It becomes something you trigger. Use these compliments sparingly. Use them honestly. And use them only when you mean them, because when words align with intent, they don't fade. They linger. They replay. They become a thought she can't shake. And that's how you stay on her mind long after the night grows quiet. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.